Hey ladies, happy Mother's Day and thanks for joining me for tea. Today we're going to have a conversation about how do you know that you are succeeding in your homeschool? Excellent question. How do you know whether you're succeeding in your homeschool? And what does success mean anyways? Today we're going to be chatting with Tami Maroney, and she is a homeschool mom of two kiddos on the East Coast, and I will invite her up. I believe I will invite her up. So I think you just need to press request to join. Hey, nice to see you.
I made it.
Made it. Ooh, so glad you're here. Any chance you have any sheep on your homestead that are pregnant right now?
No pregnant sheep. We
No.
have they're older sheep. They were gifted to us when we bought our home. They were here.
I,
They're just pets right now and living the life.
they are living the life. Yeah, they really are. If they get to hand off to the same homestead.
Yeah.
I have a goat. I can't tell if she's pregnant. I'm told you can't actually tell until the last month. So I was going to chit chat about goats and sheep and stuff. But
I'm not the expert on that. Nope.
okay. All right. My son, my 14-year-old son says, yes, I think she's pregnant. And I'm like, how can you tell? She's not eating more. And he says she doesn't like to be touched underneath the belly. So this is not why we came here to chat our sheep and goats. But it is our reality. We both live on a homestead
Yeah.
across the country. It's so nice to have you here,
Thank you
Tami.
for having me. I'm excited.
So I'd love to hear, for those that don't know you already, would you introduce yourself and share your your homeschool origin story?
Yeah. So I'm Tami Marone. I have two boys, 7 and 9, and we started homeschooling 2020, COVID year. But it was on my heart when my son started kindergarten, and we went to orientation. And when he got a bag that said class of 2032, I was like, ah! I was like, oh my goodness. And I got home and I said to my husband, like, am I crazy? Like, I want to keep him home. And he wasn't like, oh no, you're crazy, but nah, like it's just normal, normal growing pains of a parent sending your kid to school. I'm like, okay. And then just over that year, I volunteered in the classroom and I just still had the pull. And then COVID hit and it was like a layup and just handed it to us.
Oh, nice.
So that's how it started.
What got you started in homeschooling in 2020? There could be more than one thing. I know I started my podcast in February of 2020, so things started before then too. So I'm so glad that that's been the case, because it's been lovely to watch your Instagram stories and posts, because first of all, you just have an eye for beautiful things.
Oh, thank you.
And just putting it so beautifully, or like really noticing the important things, is how I see it.
Thank you.
But I'm curious what you've noticed this last year. What have you learned about your homeschool kids?
Okay. Well, my kids are very different. They're very much the same, but they're very different in what they need, their love languages. One likes more independence. One can do things independently, but loves to feel supported. So like figuring out their needs that way.
Yeah.
How they learn, what
Yeah.
comes easy to them, what doesn't. So that's been interesting watching unfold, because they are so much alike, but in like the learning environment, they're just different, and it's been different to navigate, which is a good thing, but challenging too. Yeah.
Like it actually gives what I can't think of the word, like credence to or credibility to that notion that kids, even though they're in the same classrooms, in the same grades, same ages, it doesn't mean that they are at the same capacity to learn, period.
Right. And as a teacher, I saw that, and I always go back to that in my mind when we'll get to the success piece, but the idea that I had children when I taught fourth grade who were on first grade reading level. I had
Yeah.
kids who were in ninth grade reading level. I had kids who were, and that's reading. Then there would be writing, math, whatever it is. Socially, there were just so many different human beings in front of you. And so at home, that's not to be unexpected that you're going to have that.
I'm not going to totally out this child, but just for the record, I have an older daughter who's not a strong speller and will still consult the 14-year-old boy at home. And it's natural born skills or not so skills. And I've got them too. There's certain areas that are really strong, and there's certain areas like, someone laughed the other day and said, ah, ha, ha, that's funny that you said that. I was actually serious when I said something about my math skills, that I don't have really strong math skills, and that's not an exaggeration. I'm not saying I'm proud. I'm just saying it really doesn't come by naturally to me. Yeah. So it is what it is, and I've got my strengths too. It is the way we were wired. Yeah. So I'm curious, what is some of, or one or a few of things that you have learned about you over the last year?
I have learned my capacity for certain noise at certain times of day. It shrinks.
Yeah.
And if I don't take breaks earlier, it's not as successful. Like I can feel like I'm a type to push through things.
Yeah, me too.
And I always have been,
yeah.
Whether I was working or exercising or whatever. And then it always hits me on the back end.
Yeah.
And now having two full-time, because last year was kindergarten for one. Now it's like we're a little bit more intense, and they're just louder and stronger and bigger and all of these things. And I have to give myself things in advance and not wait till like the point where I'm just burned.
Yeah.
So that's really come into play, just knowing, being proactive with giving myself a break and like setting a boundary and those kind of things.
So become aware of that.
Becoming aware before it's like too late, before I feel like, the days are, gone and I'm frustrated or whatever it might be. Because it doesn't even have to do with actual schoolwork. It could just be kids in general, you just have to give yourself that time to take a break and switch it up.
How did you learn, or did you build in a self-awareness practice for you to pay attention to what was going on in here? Or how do you notice what's going on?
For me, it's like breathing. I'll find myself and then I start multitasking and trying to one thing might be irritating me, and then I'm like, oh, now I need to clean the living room because this is just really setting me off. I'm like, okay, everything's not, frustrating. It's me. I need a break. Like, it's not all the things, because one day that living room a mess won't bother me, but right now it's really throwing me for a loop. So just recognizing when I start to get like that. Mm-hmm. And I just I've been really working on taking deep breaths and, getting a glass of water. Oh, maybe I didn't eat enough. I need to go eat my lunch, and just making sure I'm not putting self-care aside. The typical, not even like extra self-care, but just the basics.
Humans.
Human self-care.
Remember, you're a human.
Remember, I need to eat as well.
By the way, everything you just said, I'm like, oh, wow, that's like really my story. Yeah. Yesterday. No, not quite.
Right. And it happens, you'll catch yourself and think, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here I go.
I do. Because I actually find around moments that I am most emotionally charged, like the week or two, or the week before my period, mm-hmm. I feel like everything just got a little more jaded. And it's not like anything new came up. It's just that I just went, seeing the perspective a little shift away from happy and optimistic. And then I noticed that I get more intense about, I have to do everything. The dishes, or let's not say the dishes because the kids do it, but the laundry or the whatever, it has to get done. And now, and just kind of, more intense. And so then I have to ask myself, okay, what would really serve me right now? Or would it be 5 minutes of going to tidy up for a bit and then coming back and just saying, you know what, nothing's going to feel like it's perfect right now.
Yeah.
So build up that muscle of resistance really to the imperfect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So I would love to hear what you've learned about learning this year. So maybe that ties in with what your kids, that they're very different. Is there something similar, or do you have something else?
I think I've become more flexible, and I've learned that there's no urgency with learning. even if there is a disability, or even if there is something that you're concerned about, that like urgency doesn't have to be there, because that I think creates worry, which creates stress, which creates not productive behavior on anybody's part.
Mm-hmm.
So just toning down the urgency, and learning happens, obviously we know everywhere, but if you are concerned about a particular area, everything has a starting point. You can always back up and start, and just start where the child is and not panic about where you think they should be.
Yeah.
And just keeping that in mind all the time for me has been really helpful this year. And I know that, but in application, it's harder.
Yeah.
And in different areas, it depends on what you're working on and that kind of thing. And then the comparison piece. And it's funny because I try not to compare to other kids or public school. I had this it was like my own comparison to myself when I was a kid. Like when I was in kindergarten, when I was in second grade, and I'm like, whoa, my son is not me.
Yeah.
I am him. Neither of them are me, so just recognizing that the way I learn is going to be totally different than what they need or what they are going to be capable of.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. Well, my kids are all totally fine then if you're comparing to me at that stage, or to my kids. They've done remarkably in their learning and following their paths and their interests. But thank you for sharing that, because sometimes I remember saying that you don't have to sign up for a homeschool philosophy, and I really don't think anyone does, because your goal is your child is to home educate your child, to raise up your child, not the philosophy, not to buy into something for the sake of that.
Yeah.
And there is no one right way to do it. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But at the same time, you do sometimes want to take a little bit of this or a little bit of that and, try to incorporate it, kind of use it for your kids or for your life, because it's a whole lifestyle. But I would ask, you or whatever mothers that are watching are interested, what are the values that you have, the base values for your family or for yourself in the world? Because those are the things that really influence how you do homeschool and also make you feel really satisfied or dissatisfied with your homeschool.
So one thing is connection. But in that connection, honesty and setting boundaries with one another. So I want my kids to feel honest and be able to say, this is too hard, or I just don't feel like doing this right now, but in a way that's productive and in a way that I can respect them, and we can work together on creating, boundaries. So maybe I want to encourage them to push a little bit harder, or maybe I can pull back. But just if we're not connected, we're not going to have that conversation.
Right.
And so I think in our whole family, on everything, not just academics, but just having that safe space to be able to feel like you can just talk to them, or they can talk to me and my husband or whatever. So connection and all that is time value. Another one is balance. Just a balance of everything, whether it's...
Tell me, what does that mean? Because when I hear balance, I go, it's not real.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Balance in a sense that, like, no, it's never going to be perfectly balanced, but out breath, in breath. Like, if you're feeling like you are just pushing really hard one day, and not even academically, like yesterday was a very busy day for us, just out and about doing a million things, great things. But I would have been in balance today doing the same thing. And so just finding balance within, not necessarily each day, but within our week or within our season or whatever it is, but just finding balance in that sense.
Yeah. Just including all the things, making sure not to forget the things.
Yes, things that bring us joy and things that challenge us, whatever it might be, but just finding some sort of balance.
I love it. You are so balanced.
Oh.
The energy feels so balanced, very wide.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Even though I feel like upside down some days, but then that's when I reflect on myself and just try to figure it out.
You're good, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were going to share another value?
Well, I think I don't know if it's a value, but really seasonally living. Again, it's kind of with the balance piece, like the way we live in the winter versus around here, we have the very distinct 4 seasons. And so accepting that and leaning into it is just really important to us and our whole family.
Yeah, I love it. I really, really love it. And I didn't like going outside when I was a child, which is hilarious because I'm out all the time. And it's very life-giving to say, okay, it's springtime, you need to go outside, do hard work. I
Yep.
don't know, but there will always be something.
Oh, there's always something on our house, you know.
I really do. I don't need a nature reserve, it's my backyard.
Yeah.
But wherever we are, if it's somebody that has, the lifestyle that we have or not, finding yourselves outside and really paying attention to what's going on. When you brought up seasons, I actually thought about a discussion yesterday with homeschool moms that are feeling kind of done with the year. And I had shared that I found myself over the course of time very distinctly going in and out of homeschool philosophy seasons, is what I called it. And it would be like September to December, I am a classical homeschooler. And then somewhere in January, I'm like, I think we should do some more documentaries.
Yeah.
And by February, I'm like, so what's this unschool thing? And then March and April, we're Charlotte Mason homeschoolers, we're going outside. And by June, July, August, unschooling for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And just rinse and
Yeah.
repeat. And a little variation based on whatever child was actually being home educated, not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm the same about the whole philosophy thing. We lean into certain things based on the seasons
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah, exactly. So you had brought up a really great discussion about success, or knowing when you find success in your homeschool, or how you can determine success. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
So I think it's pretty layered in that you could look at it daily.
Yeah.
You could look at it academically, or you could look at it holistically and push back. So I think for us, success on a day-to-day basis is, how do we feel at the end of the day? What did we do well that we really want to do again? And what do we not want to do tomorrow? And so that's how I rate the day-to-day success. So that's one piece of it.
I love that feeling thing, because when I was younger, I mean, I've always worked as a currency in feelings because it's very much who I am. But I thought, well, you can't base things around that goal or that mindset, because it's too labile. And where there's truth in that, but there's also a reason that we have feelings. So we should be able to listen and hear what's really going on. So thank you.
Yeah. So in that respect, day to day, like your feelings and just how did the overall vibe feel? Do I feel like completely wiped? And it's okay, even if you had a great day, to feel wiped and need a break.
Yeah,
but
sure.
but I want to feel like enlightened and excited more so. And so then I look at it, success, like especially this time of year. And even though now I'm leaning into more of a year round, like even including the unschool in the summer, but it just kind of stretches itself that way naturally for us. But as you wrap up a grade level, or as you finish a curriculum, and you're kind of like reflecting back, or say you have a portfolio due, and in our district, we have like reports to fill out. They're not like a portfolio, but just you're reflecting back. And I'm looking at our curriculum, and my son, we're not in one of them. We got more done than the other for the year, because my older son took a lot more classes this year and was just doing different things. And so I'm trying to look at it as an exchange, instead of, did he get such and such done? What did I exchange for that? Like, what did he get instead? And where did we compromise? And that's the whole stretch of now for the end of the year. Like, I'll be able to turn in his paperwork fine and say he's on grade, like past grade level or whatever it is. But maybe we can finish our math curriculum over the summer, or the bits and pieces that I want to touch on with him, or that I want to make sure he's not missing. But also, on the days we didn't do the lessons, was he at golf lessons, or was he cuddling on the couch reading longer with me, or whatever it might be? What did we exchange for that? Instead of just looking at the checklist of success.
Yeah, that's really good. For many years, the most popular post on my website is about Maya Angelou's book. I can't remember the book, but anyways, it's about solitude. And it's all about quiet time, and like for children, and the capacity to have nothing to do at all. I actually think the homeschool lifestyle really does foster the potential for that, unless, of course, we fill every last bit with some. And I get why people want to do that. I've been there, done that myself. And also solitude, the ability to not sign up to do anything a certain time of day, or maybe in a certain time of week. That solitude has so much potential for personal growth and pondering and like really a self-development thing where people get to know themselves better. And frankly, boredom is a useful
Yeah.
tool. And in a world where we don't ever have something not to do, we have a screen there. There's always someone to talk to, something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like my son started sailing. And it was something, we're not sailors, but it was just a class that was offered. I thought it would be so cool, and they loved it in a different setting.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a good fit for us. It was not a good fit for them. And at first, it felt like to me, not a failure, but just like, oof, like, why aren't they feeling brave? Like, is it something I need to work on? And then we ended up making the decision as a family that it just wasn't going to work, and we didn't go. And so we had today. And like, so much time just to be able to say, like you said, with solitude. And we ended up going for a nice bike ride together, and the boys played at the beach with wood, and they were just building, and it just filled in a different way. And we exchanged that activity that wasn't a great fit for something that they needed.
Exactly. That's exactly what I mean. And those little pockets of time, as long as we're not filling every moment with yet one more really cool resource. And there are really cool resources right now, like stuff that I see people putting out there or creating. I'm like, wow, I did not have this back in the day. And I wasn't even in the stone ages of homeschooling. I wasn't in the pioneering days of homeschooling. It's just kind of like, 20 years into when it started to get really popular, maybe, or 10 years. And now there's tons of resources and tons of extracurriculars, and you don't want to fill every last moment with that.
No, we definitely dabbled this year with more things and experiences, which have been great, but I need to keep those days that are just like the untouchables. Just we're home.
Yeah.
These days.
That's really good. Untouchable. I do like that. Especially even for us. I actually did think that I was curtailing extracurriculars when we decided to give the kids the opportunity to make money for their own extracurriculars.
Yeah.
I don't remember how old my oldest was, but she wasn't that old, like maybe 10. And so we had this idea, this is how we would do it. And they surprised us that they actually got money and even had more extracurriculars. So I was like, okay, that didn't quite work how I thought. And then I drove for many years, and I drove and I drove and I drove, bringing them back. But I thought it was a clever idea. Nonetheless, they really did own their reasons for doing it, and they showed up. And if they didn't want to go to sailing, they definitely would have not gone to sailing.
Yes. Yeah.
So what other thoughts do you have around how we know or can identify whether we're successful?
I think honestly, my biggest thought really is like how it feels, and progress and process over some kind of endpoint, because there's going to be, in what you're comparing to. So obviously for us, we have, grades, we're like, not grades, but grade level materials we're working on, and content that we're working on. And so it feels good to check boxes. But more importantly, it's just those moments where it's almost like I think Julie Bogart calls it like a paycheck, where they cash in all of a sudden your child who at the beginning of the year wasn't reading and was just looking at letter sounds, and now is starting to fluently blend their words and read sentences. You see that progress.
Yeah.
And you don't actually have to measure it. There are tools for measuring those things, and that can be great and useful. But for me, that success my kids are younger at this point. So for me, it's just those big gains that I can see from the beginning of the technical school year. Mm-hmm. And just seeing, then when I step back, I look at the big picture and what would I be happy about? I look at it like life. The success in life can't be just something you check off. It has to be your life and how it feels to you. And are you able to take care of yourself? Are you able to support yourself? Are you able to advocate for yourself? So if my kids can do that within each year, and they get better at doing it and knowing what they need, and I get better at guiding them there, then I think you're successful.
Yeah, it's a really useful rubric. I know for myself, because I engage homeschool moms that are really coming from every walk of life, whether that's economic or, frameworks of beliefs, or whether that's like right across the board, all the homeschool philosophies. It doesn't matter who I chat with, because it doesn't matter to me how they do it. What does matter is that how they view things or what they value actually aligns with what they do, because incongruence makes us really unhappy internally. So then either clarifying what our values are, what really matters to us, are we doing it because we're believing this thing? Are we doing it because other people have told us something's valuable? Or sometimes conflict with our partners, that we don't actually have the same values in the same home for the same kids. That's a tricky thing. But there's many reasons why we might be incongruent, but the goal is to be congruent with whatever our values are and ask ourselves, is it actually happening in our home today? And so, it's a different way of looking at your exact question or your exact statement about feelings, because it is does it feel true? Does it feel right?
Right. And I feel like as homeschool moms, we read all the things and we know all like the theories that we want to believe in. But like you said, are we actually aligning with that? Are we actually practicing that? Could we do to make it better in doing that? And I am
Yeah.
textbook for that, because like I said, I love those home days. But then in my mind, it was like, well, when we're home, we need to do the academic stuff. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Because now they want that free time. They need that solitude and that time to play and to build or whatever. What I can't have both. You can have both in a sort of way, but I can't have all the things academically if I want to offer them this space in one day. So in one day, so how can I make my routine and flow look differently to, for me, feel comfortable that I'm offering them enough academically, but also offer them enough freedom and play and myself that.
Yeah, when we're talking about balance again,
Yeah.
really are we including all the things? And what I've learned, because now I'm coming to my end of my homeschool days, I have a lot of books in my homeschool room that I still haven't done. And
Right.
what am I going to do with this stuff? Like, there's a lot of books. I could be like the local community library, and but not enough people around. Mostly like Canadian, real animals, wild animals of cat. But I've got all this, curriculum and all these amazing things. And the reality is that all human knowledge, as we know today, is literally staring at us. It is inside of our phones. Mm-hmm. And so what's the goal of the education anyways? Is it to make sure that they have their upload of all human knowledge and they won't miss a beat? Right. There's no whatsoever, or we're trying to make them into demigods. And if we look at our own educations, we know we'll have gaps, because I don't know about you. I know I heard you have a different story than me, because you can compare your kids to your childhood, and you were engaged, I'm going with, and did really well. And I did not. So because of that, then I'm like, oh, well, my kids are fine if I compare. But at the same time, actually, I just want to stop there. What were you going to say?
Well, no, I was in kindergarten reading Charlotte's Web. Second grade, had to come up with my own spelling words, like from the dictionary. I remember having to write down deoxyribonucleic acid as a spelling word, because that's what I chose from the book. Yeah. And so I'm like, why am I comparing that to my child who's probably perfectly just fine the way he is, and I'm, comparing to something so ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to get those things out of our heads, though. It really is. From my vantage point, I'm like, you're doing amazingly. But anyway, meet a difference, really, because it's you that needs to be convinced, right? It's always ourselves.
Right. And I feel like the more we do it, the more I'm full and believe it's that moment of self-doubt, if anybody gets it, is checking back with yourself and saying, like you asked all those questions about your values. What is it that you really want this to feel like for your family and for your kids? And what's the whole purpose of having them at home if you're going to not make the best of it and make it feel really great for everybody? And there's going to be days that aren't good, and that's okay. Or moments, not whole days, but, moments that make it feel like, hard.
Well, I have had full days. I'm just going to throw for anybody that identifies with that. That's not the goal, but it is a reality.
Yeah, it's true.
Possibly full weeks. I can't remember. But I will say that one of the things that I have noticed, especially because I write about this a lot, about deschooling and about what the purpose of home education is. So for me, my vantage point, I go like super meta, but I do it for a big reason. we're here for, let's go with 83 days, or sorry, 83 years. And then say, what are we intending to do with that entire lifetime? And I think the education, because the intention is to raise up a child, like that's literally in the word, the Latin root to the word, to raise up a child. Well, what's the purpose of raising them up for their whole life? Like, what's the intention? And for me, I think we're all placed here for a reason, and we have very unique giftings and aptitudes. And even our children aren't able to see them clearly at age 8, 18, 25. I'm 49. I haven't figured it all out for myself. But so maybe the purpose is to be here right now, fully purposeful today. And then to keep growing and learning and allowing experiences and resources and curriculum or unwritten curriculum to really just infuse our lives so that we're fully present today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just like to look at the big picture, like you said, of pulling back and just saying, in the end, when we're done, graduated, whatever, which obviously you learn all of your life. I'm learning more now that
Me too.
I'm 41, it feels like I'm learning more than I could ever have learned. Just knowing that pressure right now is really not purposeful. It's not helpful. And if you just pull back that pressure, a lot of amazing things can happen, and there will be progress. And if there's not, then you can address it in certain areas, but also what progress are you looking at?
Right.
I remember vividly, we did a little farm stand, and the kids sell fruit and they make things and they sell plants. And my son was doing basically 3-step story problems, word problems, working out there.
Yeah.
But then when we would do it on paper, he would struggle. And I'm like, well, he can do it in real life. So why do I care that the actual paper confused him?
Yeah.
I have to so it's just fun to look at those samples in your life and say, that doesn't really weigh that much, but that he could do it in real life matters.
Yeah, it really does matter. I love that. That really gives me food for thought. And, as a teacher you were a teacher before, you're not teaching now, right? Like, no. I mean.
Not yet. I'm not teaching in a classroom. No.
Yeah, classroom. Then the way you see things, like you had rubrics for each of the classes. Mm-hmm. So how do you mentally frame that now?
So as a classroom teacher, though, it happened too. The assessments that we did were just innumerable. And how did we use them? That's what I used to say to myself, was in a classroom, how are they used? Sometimes obviously you'd reteach or redirect or go back to things, but those big assessments, by the time you get the results, kids are moving on to the next grade. What is the purpose? So in home, I don't grade everything. We have certain things we'll check up on them, but I can get an idea of what my kids know or don't know just working with them. Mm-hmm. So I take so much less pressure on actual testing. That doesn't apply to us as much. And it's just interesting how it applies in a public school setting or a different setting. And I just I pulled away from that because I used to care about that, feeling that I really needed to show this data and this growth. But then realizing I don't necessarily have to have these charts and graphs on my child because I can see it right in front of me.
It's a really tricky transition. And I know that when I'm speaking with people, especially when they're newer homeschoolers, I think I kind of go too far and kind of sometimes, because I can remember what it was like way back when. And if I had heard me, which I did, I was exposed. My very first homeschool family was an unschool family. And I was like, oh, no, that does not sound right. That sounds neglectful, or that's unhealthy. In fact, my husband sent me I think it was a New York Times article yesterday, and it was just recent. And people were talking about an unschool family, and the unschool family was in the highlight of wandering around the world and learning. Yeah. And of course was a ton of pushback in the comment section. And I get it. I understand where they're coming from, because if I through their eyes, I would have thought, this is nuts. This is not normal. This is negligent
so far out of the norm.
Too far out of the norm. And I totally get that. And then you have kids, and then you're homeschooling them, and then you're watching them learn, and then you're saying, why am I forcing certain things when they're doing them anyway? Or, it doesn't matter how much I try to force it, they're not learning because I'm trying to force. In
Or
fact,
they
it's
don't need it right now.
or
But
they
like, yeah, like we can build the foundation. And it's funny because my account, my blog, everything was roots before petals. And I started to see it with my kids, like just building those roots and not pushing to get like you can't make a flower bloom with just yelling at the flower. Like
yeah.
you need to take care of it and like just grow. But it can be slow and I'm not saying, and I think sometimes I might portray the wrong message. I'm not saying homeschool children have to work at a slower rate or don't learn
No,
as quickly. There's a lot of kids who fly in academics in certain areas. But I actually found, even as a classroom teacher, because I was a special education teacher and I taught reading intervention. And I found the kids, if I say third graders, and I worked with them on just decoding CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant, and we really mastered that, the progress on the other end on third grade content was immense because we were building that foundation slowly.
Right.
And I had fifth graders reading, going up to like 4 reading levels when we were working together. It just, because you really focus on that foundation. Beautiful. And so I just think it's so important.
I love that. Yeah. I love your flower, grow, just grow. It just
grow already.
It makes it. I think sometimes we need to get out of our kids' way. And I think more often than not, we need to get out of their way and just acknowledge who they really are, how they learn, what they need. And we're natural learning people. That's what we do, is we want to learn. And I think we are in a school educational system where everything is prescribed and there's no places to breathe and just to be. And because of that, then kids go, oh, learning. Wow. I guess that was bound to happen. All right. I think learning is, it feels like a bad word because they've got this system that has been so prescribed for them, and they don't get to think and they don't get to really be fully engaged in whatever it is. And I think that is a problem.
And I think coming from that setting, it really took me and I hadn't taught for 8 years. My son, I stayed home with my son.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been in the classroom for 8 years. But starting homes, and then I didn't homeschool him for another, he was 6, 7. So that was a long stretch of time. And, well, that doesn't make sense. No. So 8 or 9, either way, a decade. I hadn't been in the classroom. And I, still couldn't let go of a lot of those things. And so and now though, it's been 3 solid years. And I feel like I'm finally yes, it's okay. And I have a girlfriend who's a teacher, and I remember her asking about my son. Well, so you're teaching the 3 types of writing, right? And asking about it. And I didn't blame her for the question. I thought it was totally something you would ask. And I laughed to myself, which would be persuasive, opinion, and just narrative. And I remember saying, but how often does he need that right now to actually write it? Do I discuss things with him like this orally? Of course. And so if he can vocalize those things, I trust that as he builds his skills in writing, he will be able to put those things on paper better. And just seeing it from a life perspective, as opposed to this is what they need to do at a certain time perspective, is really helpful.
Yes, very much.
To build success in a different way for us.
And frankly, that pushing, when we tend to push, it really does exactly the opposite. Yeah. So especially if you do it with a yelling kind of energy, and you can ask me how I know, partly because of the way I grew up, but also because I definitely defaulted like this in fear. It wasn't, I'm trying to be mean, flower, grow up. It was, oh my goodness, you have to know this. It's so important.
Yeah.
And no, not really. Now I think not really, not so much so that you should make a child feel pressured. But one of my girls had asked me when she went into high school, because I have a daughter that went full through homeschool high school, but one of my girls had asked me, are you going to now start caring about grades? If I went, okay, so why are you asking, first of all? But no, I don't. They reflect something. I would say it does say something. So if you're not bringing in your assignments all the time and you're getting a low grade because you're not organized, well, I'm not going to shame you because you're not bringing them in, but I am going to say, okay, how can we do this to
Right.
coordinate so that you can bring in the work that you are required to do? And that would be a lifelong useful skill to know how to show up on time at work or to do your project and make sure it's handed in on time and you're working with a team. But it's not about, but did you get 95 or 82? Like,
Right.
because the rubrics themselves, based on the different subject areas, are so they just they're kind of subjective. It depends on what it is, but there's a lot of subjectivity to it and value based on what the schools are seeing or what the institution is seeing. And so then it's taking it with a grain of salt. Having said that, I had kids ask me to grade them. So go figure.
Right.
I'm home and I have tests. I'm like, really? Okay.
That would have been me if I was homeschooled.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that was, yeah, one of the kids that kind of reminds me of you. So that's interesting. And for the record, I do think it's valuable sometimes to have testing, and I wouldn't have said that before. One of my kiddos had her very first official test when she was going into a post-secondary school and had to get like a post-secondary, I don't know what they call it. It's not actually a test anymore. It's not available anymore, but it would place her in the province with whatever post-secondary schools she'd like to go to and find out if she could go to the highest ones or the ones that were deemed the most valuable to the system. And she did actually get into that level that she wanted and had never had a test before. But she said to me, Mom, being in a room of 200 people in a post-secondary school, never took a test unless my spelling test.
Right.
And then boom, I'm taking a test. It was a lot of stress for her.
Yeah. To have that experience later on. I was talking more my elementary age kids, but I totally get the value of as they get older to expose them to like some sort of standardized testing for the practice of it.
Just as practice even, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any other thoughts about how to encourage success in our homeschools?
I think it's really, it all depends on what you're looking for because there are ways to assess children methodically. Say you're using the science of reading and you want to find growth patterns and things like that. So find what works for you in that sense. But fully for me, it's become this progress piece, just feeling that they've made growth, trusting in that, and knowing that no outcome is more important than the connection that you're going to make with them. And I know it's cliche, the love of learning, but if we, like you said, dumping the water on the flower to say you need to grow, don't you need more water, and just keep watering it?
Yeah.
It's not going to. You're going to suffocate it. It's not going to survive. And so just looking at it from that standpoint, do my kids want to continue doing this? I think is important too. Do they want to keep coming to the table to learn? Are we stagnant or do we feel fresh?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think keeping things fresh helps us feel more successful too. That's just
Mm-hmm.
how we look at it at our house.
Yeah, if I've learned anything from everyone's had a different pandemic experience, but in the early days, many of us had a very similar one. And novelty was so valuable. It was such a valuable experience. And I don't think I understood how much novelty meant until that time when you had a lot of time inside your own home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So also for homeschooling, and that's probably why people naturally shift into different seasons of homeschooling. They don't just shift from one philosophy to the next or one curriculum to the next, but they're always moving based on the seasons, like we were speaking to the beginning. So I haven't asked everybody this question, and I meant to, but what would you say makes you unique and celebratable as a mom during Mother's Day?
I know that's such a hard question to like compliment yourself.
Yeah.
I think unique, I guess, would be something that makes me individualized in this way is that I think you know this. We've suffered a lot of hardship in my family loss, even over the past few years with my mother-in-law. And I think just looking at that and the loss of my father and just taking from that how important life is.
Yeah.
like the one life my kids get and the one life we have as a family. And just that's the priority. So for me, my strength would be knowing that and just not taking it for granted. I really have few days that go by that I let that go, like that I kind of lose sight of that. And so I think that would be my unique strength.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. That is so grounded, which really fits ground with the or Petals website name that you have. Grounded, you feel grounded to me. And in my experience, the people that are the most grounded are the ones that usually had the most, I'll call it compost in our lives.
Right.
Like, dang, like really, that's really hard stuff. And hard stuff can be compostable and then cause you to flourish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And so for Mother's Day, I don't know if you have any plans. Do you happen to know macaroni necklaces are being made right now?
Well, they're homeschool teachers not making homeschool, I mean, Mother's Day projects, but I will be at soccer. But my dream Mother's Day is to not have to plan anything, like to just not have to even answer the question of what I want for dinner. I don't even want to answer the question.
Yes.
So to be given that gift of not having to make any decisions, that is the gift that I like, because the mental.
Gram 9, aren't you? Did we talk about your
you know what's so funny? I don't even know.
I think you are. You feel like one of my daughters, but that's like besides the point. But that you don't want to make decisions is where I'm going with. Okay, I'll let that go. But so you don't want to make any decisions.
So wrap that in a bow and just give me no decisions.
Okay, no decisions. You are definitely an Enneagram 9. And also you want no food to be prepared with your own hands, no dishes to wash, ideally.
I love cooking, but yeah, no, on Mother's Day, I like a good restaurant.
Right. I love it. Oh, well, such a lovely Mother's Day. If you could give yourself a gift, what would you give yourself for Mother's Day?
Oh, goodness. This is going to sound funny. I really am practical. I want an outdoor sink.
That's good.
We just always have messy things. I want a mudroom too. A better mudroom situation.
I have a mudroom. It's always dirty. I would like a self-cleaning mudroom. Yeah.
I'm really a practical gift person. Like, I'm not one by jewelry and flowers. Like, no, I want something I can use.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to see that picture of your outdoor sink.
I need to get one. I don't have one yet, but I have a hose. I have the perfect setup for it. I have the spot. So we'll see.
You have the outdoor plumbing, the most expensive part?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Already ready.
Nice. Okay. Bring it on. I do. Like, wow, that sounds amazing. And think, okay, the rest of everyone here is like, what?
Are we talking about homeschool? Yes, my kids are dirty all the time. I need to wash my vegetables and their hands.
Exactly. And then there's animals. You know, I have hay in my bedroom. Okay. And sometimes the goats peer into the window and are like, that is a very cool barn. I would like to come see. And I'm like, no, we don't need you in here. Yeah.
But an outdoor sink does apply to homeschool because we like to take our work out to the deck. And so, or eat lunch on the deck. And they'll be outside playing. I don't want them to have to come in, wash up, and then go back to the table. So
yeah,
I love
it. Okay, I want to see the picture. Hashtag me or whatever we. So lovely to chat with you, and I wish you a lovely homeschool mama Mother's Day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. All the best.
Have a great one.